Hey, what's happening, everybody? Happy Labor Day weekend to you. I am coming at you with the state of the markets and stocks to watch for next week. Just real quickly here, we've got a couple of names that are reporting next week that could be interesting. One of the ones that are reporting is the GameStop, which um, has been a Reddit favorite and probably not going to be a very good report. Um, Neo, I think, is another one that could be interesting just from an electric vehicle standpoint, right? Let me see what else we got going on here. We've got Rensola. That's an oldie but a goodie. That was a solar play that had a pretty good run a while back. Billy, fuel cell is interesting. DocuSign, I think, could be another one that could be interesting for the tech sector. Let's see, we got Zoomies, we got Lovesac, Casey's. I think the ones that are most interesting to me are Neo, GameStop, DocuSign, Billy possibly, and Kroger. Kroger is another one that could be interesting just from a consumer goods standpoint. And as you can see, we're kind of wrapping up, or we're falling into the tail end of the earnings season. So one thing I want to bring up also is that we have here. Let's take a look at some of the sectors and what kind of happened last week. And we're in a very interesting spot, by the way, with the pullback to either to or below the 50-day moving average, which is not exactly something that you want to see, right? So we have been talking about the fact over the last couple of weeks, actually, we've been talking about it over the last few months, that there is a strong likelihood that we have not seen the end of, I would say, this correction, this bear market. Now, I do believe that we have seen most of the damage done in the small and micro cap space. I just don't feel as though there's a whole lot room left to the downside. However, for the large cap, mega cap names, I think there's still plenty of room to come down. And that is what's going to impact the markets the most in terms, just because of their weighting within the indexes. So that's something to keep in mind. Typically, we have September, October, and November. Actually, August, September, and October. Typically, not great months for the stock market. So, just historically. And then I think with all the uncertainty that we have coming up, we've got the midterms coming up. I think that could be that could create some more volatility, right? You want to be careful out there. I'm not saying that you don't want to position yourself into some stocks. I think that we are getting to some crazy cheap valuations on some really good companies, more in the micro cap and small cap space than in the large cap or mid cap space. But look, if the markets roll over, 90% of stocks are going to follow what the market does. Uh, Even though I do not think that there's a whole lot of downside left in some of those microcap names, doesn't mean they can't just go sideways for a while. So, got to be a little bit cautious here. We did manage to close below the 50-day moving average in a couple of the indexes, and we're going to get to that in a second. But, this is not a time to try and be a hero, right? Let's see what happens next week. And if we get any follow through on the weakness that we experienced, but when we talked last week, we were coming up into resistance just below the 200-day moving average in many instances, and we had a big move in a very short period, right? And in bear markets, when you get the bounce back, they can be violent. So they're violent, and it kind of it gives people that FOMO again. They start chasing, and then the next thing you know, we get another leg down. So I think the thing that we're going to want to look at is how do we act once we get back down to this area where we were testing lows. Like, this is BOTZ, which has got robotics and AI and stuff like that. And it's looking at semiconductors, right? So it's looking like it's going to come down and test that recent low. And if you lose that support, then then we need to start identifying the next potential area of support. Same thing with this IBB. I'm not crazy about the way that it closed because it closed below the 50-day moving average. It's kind of got a little bear flag pattern there, and we could see a move lower. And if that happens, well, that's going to correlate to the IWM. So you have a lot of these small micro cap biotech companies, one trick ponies that are also part of the IWM. And if you see the IWM, we close below the 50-day moving average there. So where did these things get really interesting and compelling? Well, back down here where we've got some potential price support, right? If we come down here and we hold, maybe that is the definitive bottom. But if it is not, if we break and close below that level, you're going to see more pain to come. And it would be the same thing with IWM. What are we looking for? All right, we didn't hold the 50-day. We come back down and we test this. Do you see these little two peaks right here? Do we come back down? We test that, see if that acts as support, or do we wind up going even lower and testing this point down here and having that act as potential support, or does that just crack altogether and then boom, we got another waterfall, right? So I'm not saying that we are going to have another waterfall. I want to be very clear. I'm saying anything is possible in the stock market. So, I have been preaching that during these times, especially over the last 14 months, there are a lot of great companies that have had their stocks punished. And I'm talking down 90% on nothing fundamental to do with the company. It's just the overall market climate, and it's the overall sectors within the market climate. So there are some tremendous opportunities out there. Does that mean that they can't get cheaper? Hell no. It does not mean that. What it means is there's, as the prices come down, if you know the story and you feel comfortable with everything that is on track and management is executing, then these are opportunities to dollar cost average to your position. I'm not saying go all in. I'm saying dollar cost average, bring that dollar cost average down, identify the next area of potential support, and maybe you put in a limit buy there, right? We'll see how this next couple of weeks plays out, but I do have a sense that we are going to probably see continued weakness. We'll see what happens though. IYT also, now IYT kind of had an interesting little candle here because it looks like it broke below the 50-day. I don't know, it still closed below the 50. Now it closed below the 50. So not necessarily an encouraging thing. And let me see here. Okay, so we talked about IYT. We haven't talked about Robo yet. Let's take a look at Robo. Or actually QQQs. Closed below the 50-day, right? The Robo, which is another of the AI robotics types firms, that also is looking like it's maybe going to come down here and test this area of potential price support. If it fails, we'll have to see where the next level of support is underneath that. SMH, right, back below the 50-day. And where can this go, right? You can go back down and test this recent low. And you have to ask yourself, what is it worth to list on publicly list if you're executing and there's no love for the stock whatsoever? I think there's a lot of companies out there that struggle with the cost of being a publicly traded company and not being able to get any coverage from Wall Street firms, or not being able to, nobody recognizing the accomplishments and the execution that the companies have been producing through a pandemic, right? So a lot of frustration out there right now, especially in this small microcap space, but I do believe there's going to be a tremendous amount of wealth created over the next 12, 18, 24 months, right? SMH, like I said, could come down, test this area of price support. S&P 500, we managed to close below the 50-day there. Same things with the QQQs, right? I really do feel as though there's more pain to be felt um, in the near term. But we'll see. And like I said, anything can happen. Building materials also coming down, closed below the 50-day. Energy, interestingly enough, is pulling back and looking like maybe it could come back and test that. That's the 50-day actually. Pull back and test the 50-day moving average. Test this little trend line. See if that holds the support. That was one of the stronger sectors of the last couple of weeks. Was the energy plays. XLF financials. Did that close below? Sure did. Close below the 50-day moving average. We'll just have to see how things play out with the financials. And I don't do a whole lot in the financial space. It's never been one of my favorite spaces to trade, but let me see what else we've got going on here. Industrials managed to close. Did they close above? No, they closed right below the 50-day moving average. Not a great looking series of candles here, right? Maybe it finds some strength here and goes sideways, but I'm kind of leaning towards more of a bearish open on these things. So, all right. Anyway, I got a little lost there for a second because I was checking something out, but let me back this up. So industrials, a little bit of weakness there as well. Trying to hold on to the 200-day, but we'll see what happens next week. XLK, that's the similar to a QQQ ETF, which is primarily tech. You got XLP, which is consumer staples, and that's actually closed below its 50-day moving average as well. Utilities kind of have an interesting looking pattern here on the utilities, kind of a cup with handle formation. We'll see what happens with utilities, but if those pick up, you get a lot of strength in utilities, that would not necessarily be a good thing because it's a bearish type or a safety type play. Healthcare, same thing. We broke below the 50-day moving average. Kind of looks like it might be putting in a bear flag here. Consumer discretionary pulling back to the 50-day. Looks like that'll be a big test area. XRT is back below the 50-day. And XTL, which is the telecoms, they're also testing their 50-day moving average. So XOP, just like XLE, we are getting a bit of a pullback. We'll see how that reacts at about. It's like that's the 50-day as well. Hold on a second. Somewhere around 130 or so. See how it acts at that area of potential support. And that is pretty much it in terms of the markets, right? I think this is still a time that we want to be a bit cautious. I did want to take a look at the T2107 and the T2108. SKYX, right? So that was on my list last week. It's on my list again this week. If the markets really roll over and this stock happens to go with it, if it cracks below 3, I would consider that a gift. I think it's a gift right here. But if it were to crack below 3 or maybe go down and, test those lows at around $2, I would be an aggressive buyer of SKYX. You can see the video I did on YouTube. I'm going to be doing a follow-up video in the near future there. I think it's a company you want to keep a very close eye on. But let's take a look at the T2107, T2108. All right, now remember, T2107, T2108, these are just indicators that kind of give us an idea that things might be getting a little either frothy or a little oversold right now, or a lot oversold or a lot frothy, right? And right now we're kind of fiddle in the middle. Anything under 20 is when we're starting to get a little overdone to the downside. Anything above 70 is when we're getting a little overdone to the upside. So T2107 is the amount of stocks that are above their 200-day moving average. And right now we're getting down into what, the 25 level. We break below 20. And then when it gets really, really interesting is when you get into single digits, right? We get into this area down here, right? And you can see what happens when you get these extreme oversold or panic type moves. You get these very violent moves higher. Kind of what happened here, but we didn't get as low as I would have liked to have seen. That kind of indicates we've got total capitulation. We haven't had that yet, I don't think, in the overall markets, and I do believe that that's probably coming in the near future, but we'll see. Let's look at the T2108, which is the amount of stocks over their 40-day PMA. And again, you look at the extremes, right? When we got down to single digits, and then you look at the kind of move they had back. We had a very big run in a very short period of time, and look how fast it's coming back, right? So I think the areas where it gets interesting on this T2108 is that we come back down. I mean, we were up in the 70 and 80, right? And now we are coming back down. We're about to crack, let's see, we closed at 31. And I wouldn't be surprised if we got into single digits with this one as well, right? So that would be the time that I would be kind of aggressive in adding to my positions. There are a couple of stocks that actually I'm starting to do some due diligence in. And I'll probably be doing I'm going to be doing interviews with each of those companies in the very near future. Both of them very compelling. Last week we talked about MAPPF, right? This is one that I think is extremely undervalued. I do believe that, there are things happening there. You're starting to see a little bit of volume. Now we've gotten extended here. We have gotten extended. Look where this thing came up to. It came right up into the 200-day moving average, right below it. And then, but look at, more importantly, I think, look at this longer term trend that is being broken, right? Now maybe we come back down and we test this area, but to me, it looks very apparent that, the downward pressure, the selling is abating. And could we come back and maybe retest these lows? Sure, that's possible. It got very extended very quickly. This is fairly thinly traded, right? So even though these candles look large, it's not a whole lot in volume. But what do we got here? Wasn't like this crazy volume day, but this is a very compelling story. And I think if you get an opportunity to get it anywhere under 15 cents, if it pulls back, you can get it under 15 cents. I think it's a great place to maybe either take a starter or, take half your position, something like that. But really do like the story there. I don't want to really talk about the other company that I am looking into, not yet anyway. I think it's going to be interesting to see how the markets react next week after we come back on Tuesday. Not exactly crazy to see the markets show a little bit of weakness heading into a holiday weekend. Let's see what the temperature is like when we get back from vacation and see what how everybody feels about the markets and where we're at, right? Red Cat was another one that I think I talked about last week. And I think Red Cat is really setting up interesting here, right? At this basically 250 level. If we can take out 250 and close above it, I think it could get very interesting with Red Cat. And let's see. Is there anything else? I don't think I'm gonna highlight any other stocks. Oh wait, VMAR. Vision Marine. Pretty interesting close on Friday. Would not be totally shocked if you were to maybe see a red to green move on VMAR next week. You know, they blew through that 100. Let's see. Jaguar had the world record for electric motors on water. It was like 88 miles an hour. Vision Marine just blew through it with 104 and 109 miles an hour with their outboard motors. It was very cool to see. Awesome to listen to this boat rip by. Typically, that would be a very intense roar, and instead it was kind of like almost a whisper. This is very, very cool. But this is another name. You know, this showed some strength on Friday. Not a tremendous amount of volume, right? Very thinly traded. That's where you have to be a little bit cautious. I would not be chasing this, right? Would not be chasing it because the price can be moved around a bit with not that many shares. So be careful there. I've got a couple more interviews that I will be putting out on the YouTube channel and probably this week. And then there'll be more coming the following week. You know, just be patient. This is the time where you do your research and look for, you know, companies that have been taken out to the woodshed unfairly, and there are a lot of them right now. To me, this is a great opportunity, and I do think it's going to create a tremendous amount of wealth for those that know where to look. All right. Be careful, be safe, have fun, enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I will see you all soon.